College with Chris Graham.
Let's talk some UVA basketball, shall we? Chris Graham here. On this segment, we'll talk about the big news of the week in UVA hoops. Jabri Abdur-Rahim committing to UVA, and the highest rated commit of the Tony Bennett era since Kyle Guy committing to the Virginia program for the class of 2020. So a year in between, he's a rising senior, 6'7", 185-pounder from New Jersey. And that last name might be familiar to you, Abdur-Rahim. Yes, he is the son of Sharif Abdur-Rahim, who played in the NBA for 12 seasons. He was a one-and-done player back when there weren't a lot of one-and-done players back in the mid-1990s at Cal. Now the president of the G League, and his son Jabri saying that he doesn't think of himself as a one-and-done player as he gets himself ready to go to UVA here in about a year and a half. He thinks of himself more in line with a guy who's going to stay around for a while, which will be interesting to see how that all plays out. But Abdur-Rahim, number 28 recruit in the ESPN 100 for the class of 2020. I mentioned he's the highest ranked recruit to commit to UVA since Kyle Guy. Guy was number 27 in the ESPN 100 in 2016. So it says a lot about this young man's potential, at least as far as how the recruiting analysts see it. He had narrowed his college choices down to two, UVA and Michigan. At least that's what we were told. He announced earlier this week that he was going to put it out on Twitter. I'm recording this on Thursday afternoon. He said it was going to be Wednesday night, last night at 7 p.m. And, hey, he was punctual. I looked at 7 p.m. and it was right there. And he had a artwork of himself in orange and blue. And he joins a 2020 class that includes the number 40 player in the ESPN 100, point guard Reese Beekman, who committed back at while he was in Charlottesville for the NBA Top 100 camp. Abdur-Rahim was also at this NBA Top 100 camp. In fact, led that camp in scoring 17.3 points per game in the scrimmages there. So those two guys will be familiar with each other. And also four-star shooting guard Carson McCorkle in that 2020 class, which as of right now, I know I could write a headline. I haven't done it. I'm avoiding doing it, even though it would be great clickbait, about how right now, at this very second, the UVA 2020 recruiting class is ranked number 1 in the country. It's not going to last. That's why I'm not going to write that. I mean, I guess I could because I can use clicks. Clicks are good. But you know that when Duke and Kentucky work their magic with one-and-dones, they're going to surpass this class. That's okay. We'll do some roster analysis for 2020, 2021 in just a few seconds. But for right now, this is the number 1 class, and that doesn't even include the fact that also coming in terms of eligibility in that 2020-2021 class will be the Marquette transfer Sam Hauser. Hauser is going to be a senior that year. He's got to sit out his transfer year this year. His junior season at Marquette scored 14.9 points, averaged 7.2 rebounds per game, 45% from the floor, 40.2% from three, 92.4% from the free throw line. And back in 2016, he was the number 86 player in that year's ESPN 100. So, wow, you look at you look at that class coming in, and the recruiting analysts won't include Hauser when they're talking about how to rank the overall class. But effectively you should. He's only a 1-year guy, but of course Duke and Kentucky will have a lot of 1-year guys in a different realm. And this guy will be 22 going on 23 by the time he suits up for Virginia in the fall of 2020. But this you include that with the 2019 recruiting class. So I mentioned basically there's 4 4-star players there, all ranked in the ESPN 100 in the class that they were coming out in or are coming out in. And then the 2019 recruiting class that is already making its way to grounds. Casey Morsell, the number 57 player in the ESPN 100 for 2019, a 4-star point guard, a 4-star forward, Kadeen Shedrick, number 70 in the ESPN 100, and then a JUCO All-America shooting guard Tomas Waldentense. Didn't get recruiting rankings because he's a native of Italy and wasn't on the radar for the American recruiting services, but he's a JUCO All-American. And so you look at this roster, and yes, in 2019 we've talked about how maybe 2019 will be a little bit of a struggle, and it's going. And when I say that, I mean it relatively. I do not know how you could say that. I look at what you have coming back for next year, and it's going to be a top 10, top 12 team at least, and be very competitive. Win 25 or more games, probably, be in line to go to a Sweet 16 or an Elite 8. But this 2020-21 team, and let's talk about this. This is the fun one. It's at this stage, it's summertime, and it's all fun when you think about it. But yeah, I was actually the way this. I wrote a column on this last night. The way this evolved was I was texting with a group of friends and we were discussing the Abdur-Rahim commitment and kind of thinking through what that roster will look like. And the more I texted out my thoughts, the more I realized I got to put this together. I got to do something with this. You look at that roster going into 2020, 2021. We've already talked about that group of incoming freshmen: Jabri Abdur-Rahim, Reese Beekman, Carson McCorkle, Sam Hauser, the transfer, the class of 2019, Casey Morsell, Kadeen Shedrick, Tomas Woldetense. That's already 7 guys right there. That doesn't include who you have coming back. Kihei Clark that year will be a junior. He'll be a sophomore in 2019, be a junior going into 2020. Clark was only a 3-star, but he's a guy who somehow worked himself into averaging 33 minutes a game in the NCAA tournament this year. Obviously a very key guy. He's going to be around. He's a building block, no matter what the star system might have to say about that. Jay Huff, you don't forget about Jay, but looking at 2020 and assuming he doesn't just leave after next year, he will be a senior at least academically next year because he did redshirt a year. Jay was a number 73 player in the ESPN 100 in 2016. You kind of forget that because he's really struggled to get playing time with this rotation to this point in his career at UVA. 4-star, number 73 recruited in 2016. He'll be a redshirt senior in 2020, again, assuming he's there, and I will assume he's there. He'll be alongside a 4-star 2018 center, Francisco Cafaro, who that year will be a redshirt. He'd be a redshirt sophomore in 2020. And then Shedrick, who is likely going to redshirt this year, 2019. So, you have him in the mix. J Huff 7'1", Francisco Cafaro 7'1", Kadeen Shedrick 6'11". When I look at the roster, then those are guys competing for spots at the 5. You got to remember, Mamadi Diakite will be he'll be out of the mix after 2019-2020. He'll be a redshirt senior next year, and we know that Mamadi will be in the NBA going into 2020. I look at this roster though, and you got to think, if you're still in the mindset of a basketball rotation is, starting lineup is 2 guards, 2 forwards, a center. That's not the way it's played by a lot of folks, and certainly not the way Tony Bennett has played it the last several years at UVA. His group is 1, 2, and 3, basically a 3-person backcourt, if you want to say, and then a 4 and a 5 in the post. And last year's team, when you do the math, you don't have to figure this out very much, but when you do the math, right around 75% of the minutes were actually played by guys you would call guards. So that tells you that really they went 4 guard about 75% of the time, and that's why last year's group was so different and more dynamic offensively and still very good defensively. You had the ability with DeAndre Hunter and Braxton Key, 2 guys who are 6'7", 6'8" guys who can guard any position on the floor. They can guard point guards. They can guard centers. Because of their defensive flexibility, you could put groups out there that were so different than what you'd expect to see. Groups that you see a lot in the NBA. The Golden State Warriors, for example. The Cleveland Cavaliers when LeBron was in Cleveland. Groups without a traditional center that are more effective without a traditional center. The 2020 group, the 2020-2021 group for Tony Bennett will be similarly flexible. And it's because this time it'll be because of Sam Hauser. Joey Hauser's going to Michigan State. It'll be because of Sam Hauser. And Hauser is a guy at 6'9", and it'll be more because of his offense. It was the defense of DeAndre Hunter and Braxton Key that allowed that flexibility last year. Hauser's 6'9", but he's a 6'9" perimeter shooter, and he is going to be as good as anyone we've ever had on the perimeter. I mentioned he shot 40% from 3-point range, 92% from the line. He's 6'9". And so what you're going to have, in Tony Bennett's offense, what he likes a lot, obviously his big guys screen a lot. And no matter what you call if you play a 4-guard lineup, still one of those guards, the bigger of those guards, it might have been DeAndre Hunter last year or Braxton Key when they're on the floor, but one of those guards is going to have to still, in the mover blocker sets at least, have to set screens and then pop off them. Well, you got Sam Hauser at 6'9", setting screens and picking and popping to the 3-point line. He's going to have some fun in this offense. And then, of course, there's the continuity ball screens and everybody being open in various ways there, and guys running off screens at the different places in that particular set of plays. He's going to be very adept at that, and so it's going to be his offensive flexibility that will be a key for that 2020 team with what Tony Bennett will pull out there. He's going to have a couple of big guys too, though, in the backcourt. Tomas Wodatensei, we haven't seen him play yet, and he's coming off of a shoulder injury. He's more focused on rehab at this stage, but as he gets towards the fall, will be able to get himself back into basketball shape, if you want to say. But he's a guy that, he's 6'5", a 6'5" left-handed three-point shooter, 47% from three-point range last year. We talked about Jabri Abdur-Rahim, 6'7", a perimeter guy. He had in the Nike EYBL spring circuit this year, he had a game with 44 points where he made 10 threes in one of these elite level spring games. So you're talking about a guy who can really pour it in from the perimeter, get to the basket. In his case too, and he's also again a bigger guy, 6'7", comparing very favorably in a lot of folks' minds to DeAndre Hunter, but coming in with more of a pedigree perhaps than DeAndre Hunter, the number 4 pick in the draft this year. So you've got Hauser at 6'9", you've got Abdur-Rahim at 6'7", you've got Wodatensei at 6'5", who can all score from the outside, who are bigger guys. It's going to be hard to. It's going to be really hard for opposing defenses to kind of pick out who they want to, which poison they're going to pick there, if you want to say. So you got those guys who can pour the ball in the basket from the 2 and the 3, and really big 2s and 3s. Well, then look at the rest of the group. When you talk about the other top recruits, Reese Beekman, a 6'2" point guard, number 40 in his class. Casey Morsell, a 6'2" point guard, number 57 in his class. We talked about Kihei Clark and what he brings to this mix. This rotation is so interesting. Carson McCorkle, again, another 6'4" shooting guard. And we're not even talking about Cody Statman, a 6'7" shooting guard, who by 2020 will be he'll be a junior that year. Justin McCoy, a 6'7" shooting guard, who will be either a sophomore or a redshirt freshman in 2020. This is a group that's 10 deep. Now, Tony likes to go 8 deep. This year's group, 7 guys actually averaged 16 minutes or more per game. Jay Huff was the 8th guy, averaging 9 minutes a game. So, it's stacked. It's the 2020 group is stacked with 8 4-star recruits, and then the 2 guys of the 10 that I've just talked about who aren't 4-star recruits are Tomas Wodatensei, a JUCO All-American who put up incredible numbers in his second season in JUCO ball, and that's that. If you want to dismiss that, that's good quality basketball. It's not played in front of big crowds, but it's good basketball. He will be a contributor this year for UVA. His senior season will be even more so. And then Kihei Clark, a guy who, yes, no pedigree to speak of, except for the fact that he averaged 33 minutes a game in the NCAA tournament. You don't get time on the floor for an NCAA that amount of time on the floor for an NCAA champion without being able to ball. And again, that group of 10 doesn't include Statman. It doesn't include McCoy. And so the future is nice. It's going to be a fun group. It's going to be a group that, again, Tony can go a lot of what we will call 4-guard, but with the athleticism of Hauser, of Abdur-Rahim, of Wodatensei. I'm going to leave people out and offend people. The bigs that we have in that mix, Huff and Shedrick and Kafaro, that's going to be a fun group. That's going to be a fun group looking ahead to 2020. So, it's among those things that work out. When Abdur-Rahim commits, there was the Johnny Juzang news from this year. He would have been reclassified to this year's class and could have been a contributor this season. And I think things work out the way they're supposed to. This Abdur-Rahim kid, he handled himself the right way. I'm not too sure that a lot of us thought that Johnny Juzang, with the way he handled his announcement going to Kentucky, and things he talked about as being priorities for him, that we felt like that was the way we wanted things to go with with a player that would be coming to UVA. Everything you read about Jabri Abdur-Rahim, his family, he's a good fit for Tony Bennett and his system, and it speaks volumes that he's chosen this path. He's chosen UVA, and boy, it's going to be fun to see. So. We'll come back after this break. Let's talk some UVA football news. News I'm creating anyway, as we're looking at towards next week in the ACC football kickoff. And I'll kick things off myself here with my ACC Coastal Division preview. That's coming up next.
This is Street Knowledge with Chris Graham.
Okay, we're back. We're talking now UVA football. Just wrapped up some talk about UVA basketball. Looking ahead to 2020 already. Skipping 2019, which is not going to be a year to skip. As far as basketball is concerned, and definitely not going to be one to skip when you look at the football situation in the ACC, which is what we're doing today. We're heading off next week, Scott German and I, and then our friends over at our sister website, JerryRatcliffe.com. Jerry Ratcliffe, his son Scott Ratcliffe. We're all heading down to Charlotte for the ACC football kickoff, and there's a lot of stuff going on there. It's an opportunity for us to, be able to mingle with other reporters for the first time in a while. The college sports season, it really ends. There's basketball, or there's baseball and lacrosse, but really after basketball's over, folks kind of go in their own directions. Well, we'll all recollect next week, and we'll make fun of each other and have some fun there. But also, importantly, the important stuff going on is, well, you get players and coaches from all 14 teams get your first chance to interact with folks talking actual football, and then the voting that goes on. Yes, we actually get to cast votes for things like all ACC teams, football teams, and then your votes of a predicted order of finish in the divisions, and then who wins the championship, etc. So for many years, I've been going to this event, and Virginia football is an afterthought. I usually take a picture of myself with the ACC football championship trophy, and I'll post some caption along the lines of, "They shouldn't let someone from UVA this close to this thing." This year, we should be close to it. The last couple of seasons, first three seasons of the Bronco Mendenhall era, Virginia voted 7th in the Coastal Division. That's last for those keeping score at home. This year, okay. There's a lot of love out there among the magazines about Virginia being the favorite in the Coastal. Until next week, let's just see. This will be the official, if you want to call it the official rendering of how things go in the preseason. Scott German and I were debating this. The first time we debated this was on our walk back from the Belk Bowl. It was a nice afternoon in Charlotte. That game's December 29th. It was last year anyway. A Saturday afternoon. It was probably around 65 degrees in late December, and we're walking back from that 28-0 beatdown of South Carolina. And it took a while for us to the immediate entrance and exit was behind the stadium from where we parked, and that's a big football stadium, and we got kind of turned around a couple times. So it was a long walk back to the parking garage to get our car. And Scott's saying, well, we're going to be the preseason favorite in the Coastal. Nah, Scott, come on. This is still the ACC. The people who show up at these events are going to vote for either Miami, Virginia Tech, probably both ahead of UVA. And then Scott got depressed. And that's usually what my role is when it comes to Scott and I is Scott's the one who has the bad feelings, and then I make him feel better. Well, that dose of reality wasn't good, so we had to head over to the Hooters and get a couple of ciders and maybe you feel better anyway. So here we go. I've been threatening all spring and into the summer. Hey, we'll take as many reporters as they'll credential from Augusta Free Press, and we'll stuff the ballot box. Well, we're not going to need to do that. I think that there might be enough love out there. UVA might actually come out of this as the preseason favorite in the Coastal, and I'm going to make them mine. I've already put my vote out there. Here you go. Here's my rendering of the ACC Coastal. And I guess I've got to figure out on the other side. We don't play too many of those teams, so I don't really pay that much attention. That's part of the wages of sin of having a 14-team football conference is, you don't see those schools very much in football, so you don't even think about them. But Coastal Division. I got UVA number 1. I'm biased, but I think it's a fair thing here. I got Miami number 2, and we'll talk more about the individual teams coming up. But Miami's got a lot of talent, and they've had it for a while. They just haven't put the piece together. I'll put Virginia Tech number 3, and after number 2, I think it could be a crapshoot. But Duke at number 4, Pitt 5, UNC 6, Georgia Tech 7. The Coastal is going to suck this year. I'm just saying it like it is. The Coastal is going to suck this year. The UVA-Miami game in early October is the game of the year in the Coastal, and really the rest of this division just sucks. So why do I like UVA so much? Well, here's why I like UVA so much. You got the best quarterback in the division. And, man, there are a lot of conferences that Bryce Perkins wouldn't be the best quarterback in your conference. 3,600 yards total offense last year, 923 rushing, 2680 passing, 25 touchdowns passing, only 9 interceptions, 9 touchdowns rushing. This guy he's a classic college quarterback. Those numbers, the only guy in the country who had similar numbers, better numbers, was the guy who won the Heisman Trophy, Kyler Murray. And so Perkins comes in now, second-year quarterback, a senior, and now they got to replace on offense, UVA does, your best receiver, Olamide Zaccheaus, 93 catches, 1,058 yards. Your leading tailback, Jordan Ellis, 1,037 yards on the ground, 10 touchdowns on the ground. But I don't know that Ellis will be as hard to replace. I love the kid, talented kid, but there are some really good guys back there in the backfield. Zaccheaus might be a little tougher to replace, but he's a 5'9" receiver. There are some guys out there they can pitch and catch with. Zaccheaus was sort of a safety valve that got used an awful lot by Perkins in his first year. But I think that they'll do fine because they've got Perkins, because you've got some experience back on the offensive line, and then on the other side of the ball, the defense, you get a lot back. I think you've got the preseason favorite for ACC Defensive Player of the Year in cornerback Bryce Hall. He would have been a first-round pick in the draft if he went out last spring. He comes back for senior year. We'd pray that the Anthony Poindexter thing, I shouldn't even say this out loud, but just pray that we have a defensive back who's going to be a first-round pick who doesn't get hurt. Because, man, and he's such a nice kid. I got to talk to him for about 10 minutes right before the Belk Bowl last year, the day before the Belk Bowl. What a humble – he's going to be a first-round pick. Humble kid. Awesome kid, and root for him, and then he's a hell of an athlete. The defense last year ranked third in the ACC in total yards, second pass defense efficiency, fourth against the run. A balanced defense. You're not talking about, hey, they're really good against the run, they get burned on the pass, or vice versa. Good balanced defense, and what's best about this team, and really in both ways, both offense and defense. Defensively, they actually got better last year when they lost 3 guys in the NFL. Because they're young, they're athletic, they're fast, they fly to the ball. It's like they're running downhill. It's a Bronco Mendenhall defense. And then offensively, you got a quarterback who's mobile. You've got weapons. And this team is in incredible physical condition. They're tougher than you are. They know it, and they're going to assert their will. And so this is, and I talked to Bronco. I've written about this a couple of times. I wrote about it earlier this summer as well. But before the Belk Bowl last year, I got to sit down with him for a few minutes. And the first question I had was, Coach, we knew that this was the kind of program you wanted to build. The defense flying to the ball, a quarterback that's mobile that can, serve as the sort of a point guard, really, sort of the basketball analogy. But you're at least a year, maybe 2 ahead of schedule. And he said, yeah, he thought at least a year ahead of schedule. Now they've got that experience. They went out, and of course, a lot of us like to think that we were 2 plays from a 10-win season. Had the beatdown of an SEC team in South Carolina in that bowl game, and so that, and I think how key that is, we'll find out here in a few weeks when the opener at Pitt, a team that's had our number for the last few years. But I really think that the tailwind of that win over South Carolina has really fueled some positive mental growth for this program throughout the spring into the summer here. And so let's go into those key games, and it's just you kind of get a sense of why I think that this program should be the favorite. You start, the last few years we started with a William & Mary or a Richmond. This year, because of the ACC network, the ACC wanted some big games first weekend. We start at Pitt. This was the game of the division last year, and Pitt won. They ran Virginia to the ground, 23-13 win in Charlottesville. Ran the ball early, often, late, down our throats. Pitt has to replace 4 stars from his offensive line, and if you're going to get a team like this that has your number, get them early when they're still kind of figuring things out. And so it's on the road, but I think that I like Virginia's chances against a team that has a lot of flux, especially in the most – because Pitt ran the ball down a lot of teams' throats last year. They asserted their will on teams, including a Virginia team that made a point of asserting its will on opponents last year. They're not going to be able to do so in this opener against Virginia. Even on the road, a win against the division champ on the road will be a nice springboard for this team. Second week, you've got William & Mary. Third week, you've got Florida State, one of Virginia's 2 Atlantic Division games of 2019. They're coming off a horrible season, 5-7 record, first under 500 record in about a million years down in Tallahassee. It's interesting what you're seeing coming out of Tallahassee. You're seeing a lot of sort of historical revisionism, blame being put on Jimbo Fisher as he was on his way out the door towards Texas A&M, that he left the program in tatters. And I think some of that's fair. Maybe a lot of that's fair. But that said, you're Florida State. You've got the resources of any as good as anybody in the country. And even with the cupboard being a little more bare, there's just no excuse for the way Florida State played last year. And so Willie Taggart is clearly on the hot seat in year 2. Football coaches generally get 4 or 5 years to kind of get things turned around, but Taggart does not have that kind of time. They open with Boise State and Jacksonville in week 1. This will be their first road game. They've got Louisiana and Monroe in between. So first road test for this Florida State team, and they may be licking some wounds after Boise State. We'll see how that goes, obviously, for them. Offense will be different this year. You can see more spread and tempo. The new offensive coordinator is Kendall Bryant. So you'll see a little bit of a different imprint from this group. There was I won't give the name, but a UVA football alum that Scott German was talking with recently was comparing the approaches of the coaching staffs, Bronco Mendenhall and Willie Taggart down at Florida State. And his assessment of this game is that I guess I could put it the way it was put to me, that Florida State's dicks are going to be in the dirt by the time this one's over. That Virginia's going to run on the ground that much, at least physically, on the line of scrimmage on both sides of the ball. So that's your look at September 14th. The weekend between then and Notre Dame on September 28th is ODU. Virginia should be, I'm saying should be, and this is with 2 conference games already, but I'm saying Virginia should be 4-0 when it goes on the road to South Bend. And Notre Dame, of course, is going to be a top 10 team by that stage. They'll have had a couple of tough games, but they're gearing up for a college football playoff reappearance. They got blown out by Clemson last year. They think they're still loaded for bear and making another run at the CFP. And they'll have played Georgia the week before. So advantage a little bit Virginia, if you want to say. Whatever advantage you can give there. They've got their starting quarterback back, Ian Book. But they're not going to really – I mean, this is a team that – it's weird to say this now. This is how much college football has changed in the last few years. Notre Dame averaged 31 points a game last year, but now that's actually – that sounds good for us old-time guys who, remember scores being a lot lower consistently. But 31 points a game in 2019 is not a great offense. It's an average offense. They're not going to outscore you. Their strength is on defense. Allowed 18.2 per game last year, 347 yards per game last year. They're a tough team. This is a game of 2 tough teams. Virginia is very similarly constructed. I talked about the defense last year and its ranks in the ACC. I look at this game. It's on the road. It's on national TV. It's an NBC game because of Notre Dame. Big at home. I look at this as the kind of game that Virginia can win. I mean, it's 2 teams. Virginia's got the better quarterback in this game. I think Virginia's got the better defense in this game. Notre Dame's got the home field advantage, and Notre Dame's got touchdown Jesus. But I like Virginia going in with at least a puncher's chance, and stranger things have happened. So then there's an off week, and then I talked about what I think the game of the year in the Coastal will be. October 11th, Miami. On the road, Virginia won last year in Charlottesville. Miami had come in on a 5-game winning streak, had a 5-1 record, ranked, I think, was 16th in the country. That loss really set things down for Miami, all the way to the point that Mark Richt, quote-unquote, retired at the end of the season. Manny Diaz takes over, the former defensive coordinator under Richt. Had the brief flirtation with Temple, and then he came after Richt left. Diaz came back to save the day in Miami. He's the latest guy to try to save the day. You think back to Larry Coker. You know, they had the 1 year at the end of the Larry Coker regime back early 2000s where, you know, things went squirrely, and I think they were 6-6 one season. Got rid of him after just that one down season. Randy Shannon kind of ran the program down to the ground, and Al Golden was hired to take it over. Golden recruited great, had some top 5 recruiting classes, never translated to wins. Mark Richt turned it into one good season. He took Golden's great recruits and won. They started 10-0 a couple years ago. But since then, they've been 7-9. Since that 10-0 start 2 years ago, 7-9 since. And the talent's still there. They've still got, I mean, you know, if they can put the guys in the right places, they've got talent to be a top 10 team. But it's been so long since Miami's been able to translate talent into victories. The big issue this year for Miami, as it has been for a long time in Miami, will be, can they figure out what to do at quarterback? Now, they brought in Dan Enos, former Alabama quarterback's coach. He's got a reputation as being a bit of a quarterback guru, I guess, when your, you know, pupils include Jalen Hurts and Tua. Let's just say Tua, because I can't say his last name very well, and I'll definitely butcher it. But he's got some good pupils lately. That makes you look like a quarterback guru, and of course, when you're working with the talent that Alabama can recruit, that'll make I could look smart coaching those guys. But he comes in with that reputation. They're going to spread the ball. Tate Martell is going to be a key here too. Martell, the Ohio State transfer, is competing for the job. N'Kosi Perry looks like he'll compete for the job too. Last year, starting quarterback for a time, he lost his job, got it back, and you know they just couldn't figure it out last year. Their defense will be good. The offense is going to probably stink it up. The defense, Miami led the ACC in total defense and pass defensive efficiency, third against the run, turnover chain, whatever. They make their offense better when they can by creating the turnovers that they do, and they stop. And so this game, when we head down there, it's a Friday night in Miami. It's going to be another one like that Notre Dame game. You know, a lot of talent on the field, but it'll be a lower scoring game. I think this game plays a lot like last year's game in Charlottesville. So if you come out of that one, I mean, here I'm absolutely bonkers crazy. I think at worst you come out of this one, you win this one, you're at worst 5-1. I don't know that we don't beat Notre Dame. I'm really drinking some Kool-Aid here, but I don't know that we don't beat Notre Dame. So okay, a few in between. You got Duke and Carolina and whatever. I put Georgia Tech on my key games list mainly because I just wanted to have an excuse to talk about Georgia Tech. You almost wish this one had been earlier in the season, and then you don't. Georgia Tech's in year one of what you have to expect is going to be a 2 or 3 year transition, because you got to remember Paul Johnson's not the coach there anymore. Jeff Collins is the coach, and Jeff Collins had a couple of years at Temple, and you know Temple's Temple, but he's bringing in everything is new. They had a new offensive coordinator, which means everything's changed. Paul Johnson ran the option for 11 or 12 years, however long he was there. When you recruit for the option, you recruit a quarterback who can run the option. You recruit linemen who can block the option. And linemen who can block the option aren't linemen who can pass block. They can't power run block. You for the option, you need smaller, quicker. I say smaller. I'm not talking 220, but you're not talking 300. You want guys who are 250, 260, 270 at most, because you're asking them to do a lot of trapping and a lot of getting downfield around the edges and stuff like that. So you don't want the big hogs. You want relatively lithe guys. Your receivers need to be able to crack back block. They need to be able to catch the ball, but it's different. You're not running routes. You're not running the route trees. You're not doing a lot of things. So and your running backs are even different. Now you'll be asking your running backs to be able to catch the ball in the backfield, to be able to pass protect. They're not asked to do that a lot or very much at all in the triple option offense. So You've got a whole set of personnel on that side of the ball that are completely and totally out of place in a new offense and a spread offense, a more modern offense. And so it's going to take a while. And so that's why I say you almost wish this had been earlier in the season because, earlier in the season, these guys are still trying to figure out how to line up right? I mean, obviously to a degree they'll figure that out, but there's no muscle memory for these guys. And, of course, they're not guys who were recruited to play this style of football. So, yeah, get them early and you can kick them in the teeth a little bit. But one thing about that, too, you get them too early. If you played them the first weekend, for example, you don't have any tape. There's no preseason games. You're not going to get any inclination of what they're going to do, how they can do it. So maybe it's better you see them late. And no matter what, we're going to see them late, November 9th. So you'll get you get some game tape to study. You get to see some tendencies. This one I don't think will be that competitive. Nothing against Georgia Tech. They'll still, obviously defensively, they'll still have what they have personnel-wise. They can do a lot of stuff. But offensively, it's going to be a real struggle for them this year, and that's just part of the transition. When you transition away from a guy who runs the triple option, it takes a while to get out of that. It can take a long time to refuel that plane, and it's going to take some time in Georgia Tech and down in Atlanta. So we look at the last game on the printed schedules anyway. November 29th, another Black Friday, Virginia Tech yet again. And all I got to say is two words, 15 straight. 15 straight. Ugh. And last year, I mean, there have been some close ones in that. There 2014, Virginia led 3 minutes to go down in Blacksburg, and then didn't run the prevent defense, which didn't prevent a win because they threw it over our heads, got a touchdown. We had a chance late to score and flubbed it up because that's what Virginia does. There were a couple other ones in that series, but last year, man, I mean, it was so obvious that Bronco Mendenhall and his staff put such a premium on that game. They came out in the first half. I think the score at halftime was 14-0. But line of scrimmage wise, Virginia seemed to have control. It's just they obviously had put too much emphasis on the game, and the guys played really flat. And in the second half, Tech couldn't stop them. Virginia eventually stopped themselves and had a couple leads late. Couldn't hold it. Held Virginia Tech to a field goal in overtime. Had the ball with a chance to win. Bryce Perkins fumbles. I mean, we all remember. It took me 20 minutes to type a tweet out. This year is the year. Last year should have been the year. This year's the year. Virginia Tech's coming off a losing season. The Justin Fuente era is about to implode on itself. I put another game on the schedule. This is not on the printed schedules. That's why I said the November 29th game, Virginia Tech's the last game on the printed schedule, because there's one more game. December 7th, Charlotte, North Carolina, the Clemson Tigers. You won't see this on the schedule, but it's going to happen. Hey, I'm saying Virginia's going to win the Coastal. If I'm saying Virginia's going to win the Coastal and I'm analyzing the key games of the season, I got to tell you about Clemson and how Virginia matches up. Well, okay, so the Tigers are the Tigers. Trevor Lawrence is the quarterback. He's a Heisman Trophy candidate, favorite probably going into the season as a sophomore. If he's not, something's wrong. Their tailback, Travis Etienne, if he played anywhere else, he'd be the Heisman favorite off this team. He's that good. The strength of this team, honestly, though, in recent years, as good as the offense has been on the defensive side. Now, it's going to be a little bit of transition this year for that group. The defensive line has always been the dominant part of that dominant defense, and they lost a lot from last year. By December 7th, they'll have figured that out, but we'll see if they figure it out and we have to score more points, or if we've got studs who step up. They've got the studs. Let's just see if they step up and if they're healthy at that stage. So, it's Clemson. I mean, Clemson's going to be Virginia and Clemson are both going to be top 3 teams in the conference defensively with Miami. Clemson is going to be the number 1 offense. Virginia might be the number 2 offense. There's going to be a gulf there, but you're going to have the top 2 offenses in the ACC. You're going to have 2 of the top 3 defenses in the ACC. They're going to have the depth advantage. Does Virginia have a chance here? And, I made a couple jokes in a column I wrote. It could rain. There could be food poisoning in the pregame meal. I mean, not intentionally. Just sometimes food served that is spoiled or something like that. I mean, something could happen. A guy could lose a punt in the lights. I mean, crap happens, right? what I say about this is, and I've been saying this for a while, because I've been saying since Scott Sherman and I walked back to our car from the Belk Bowl. We eventually found our car. I'm here talking to you now. Because that's when I said, yeah, Virginia should be the favorite. That means we've got to play Clemson. We got a chance against them. If you're in the stadium, you've got a chance. They you don't show up and then you just bend the knee, to use Game of Thrones terminology, and say, here you go, Clemson, go to the college football playoff. Good luck. You play a football game. You play 60 minutes. Maybe you play more. And here's where you see that I have had way too much Kool-Aid today. I like Bronco Mendenhall having a shot to scheme something up with nothing to lose. That's the thing about this. If, we go into this game probably a 10-2 record. Well, yeah, 10-2 because you play 12 regular season games. We go in this game 9-3, 10-2. We're still not going to be. Even at 10-2 with the schedule and with the Coastal sucking this year, 10-2, you're still probably 15-16 in the country. No, but you're not playing for a playoff bid if you're Virginia. If in fact the rest of the ACC, from a financial standpoint, is rooting for you to get your heads kicked in early so that there's no drama, so that the conference makes more money because you get a college football playoff payout for everybody that you split with Clemson and the rest of the group. So nobody expects you to win. Everybody's rooting against you in the conference. So you got nothing to lose. And you got Bronco Mendenhall, who's I like, especially he puts his imprint on the defensive side of the ball. I like him scheming. Against Clemson. I do. I know. You've got Virginia Tech the week before. You can't put too much of an eye on it down the line. But I'd be very surprised. I know that coaching staffs spend, between January and March, and then after spring practice from April until, the start of camp, among the things you do, you're out recruiting, you're out watching whatever, your training staff's putting guys through their conditioning drills. You do put a lot of time into researching your opponents for the next season, and Clemson's not on the schedule. Clemson is a team that they're looking at. They're looking at film. They're diagramming plays. They're looking at personnel. They're looking at second-team personnel. They're looking at third-team personnel to figure out, when we play them December 7th, what do we do to match up with them? Somebody, Bronco and his game control staff, they've got some stuff written up here for this game. They'll pull it out on November 30th after we beat Virginia Tech and finalize that game in Charlotte. And they're going to be ready for this team. And I like what this group can do. Yeah, okay, too much Kool-Aid for me. So there, let's wrap up our podcast on that high note. Earlier in the podcast, I got you all excited about the 2020 Virginia basketball team, and I'm not trying to overlook 2019. I'm just telling you, 2020, Jerry Ratcliffe and I might have to write another book. 2019 football, we may be writing a book about that. You never know. ACC championship comes our way, and it might be Team of Destiny Part 2. So I'm going to leave you with that. We'll talk some more UVA sports next week from Charlotte. And probably, I'm sure Jerry Carter and I will get together probably tomorrow, and I'm sure UVA will be a topic. But more hardcore UVA sports talk coming up next week. Thanks for joining us here on the podcast. Wahoo wah.